What's up, Internet folks? Welcome to the Empty Escape Pod. My name is Oots, and in this video, I'm going to be giving a spoiler-free review of Super Mario Odyssey. Now, when I say spoiler-free, I'm assuming that you have seen some of the media coverage from the game over the summer. I'll be talking about some minor game details that you would have known if you've been following the game at all before its release. So, let's get into it. Alright, first off, the costumes. The combination of the costumes and the photo mode is probably one of the best things the game has going for it. Don't get me wrong, the rest of the game is very good as well. But I am seeing Mario Odyssey snapshots all over my social media pages, just absolutely blowing it up. Lots of goofy costumes, lots of really cool costumes. The photo mode is great. I think that's something that all games should have going forward. Horizons was awesome. Mario Odyssey is awesome. All games should learn from that going forward. The second thing I want to talk about is how difficult the game is. Now, when I beat the core game, I was definitely a little bit disappointed at how difficult it was. It's super easy to just blow through that. Basically no challenge at all. There are definitely some challenging parts. And that's not to say that it's a problem with the game being too forgiving. I think it's really great how forgiving the game is. I like that there aren't any lives anymore. That it doesn't like throw you all the way out of a level and you gotta go back through some rigmarole just to get to the difficult part. So I like how forgiving it is, but I did want more of a challenge in the core game at least. Now that I have been playing the post game for a little while, that is solving a lot of those problems for me. Finding a lot more challenging scenarios, let's say, opening up in the post game. So when I did beat the core game, I was really disappointed at how easy it was, but playing the post game, it is making up for a lot of that for me. Now, next up is the moons. Now, I have a lot of mixed feelings on the moons. I think it's a really great way to reward players for exploring every nook and cranny. You get something meaningful most of the time from going into these little places and like, oh, what's in there? And you find a moon. That's a nice reward for sure. I do think there probably are too many of them, so they kind of feel throwaway, where in the core of the game you're not like, oh, where am I going to get my next moon? It's like, oh, I'll wander around and I'll find enough to get through, and it's never going to be an issue. So I do really miss the stars and sprites from Super Mario 64 and Sunshine. I think they felt like more of a reward and it was more satisfying when you did get one. But at the same time, I do think that putting so many moons in is a great way to reward players for doing relatively insignificant things, checking out cool areas and stuff like that. But I wish they had found a way, maybe like in Super Mario Sunshine, where you got the blue coins and you could buy those, trade those in for a sprite once you got 10 of them, I think it was. I wish they had kind of done something like that, although it would be weird adding a third type of currency into the game. I do get that. But I thought there were so many moons that it didn't have that same satisfying feeling of finding one as it does when you get a star in Super Mario 64 or a sprite in Sunshine. Next thing I want to talk about is the capture mechanic. I think it's a really cool idea, and there are some situations where it's used in a very cool way. My biggest disappointment with it is that most of the enemies that you capture have basically one gimmicky thing that they do, and that's pretty much it. So you'll be in a certain place and you're like, oh, I can't get from here to there, but here's this enemy that has this ability that lets me get there, and then you take them over and you get over there. There's not a whole lot of puzzle solving really with them, not as much as I would like. It's kind of just like, clearly this is what I need to get over there, let me capture this thing, and now it's done. And like I said, there were some situations where I thought that was used really well. I kind of just wish that the enemies had maybe 2 or 3 different things that they could do to make it a little bit more interesting. Maybe they could have made it a little bit more puzzly that way. But I thought it was all right and definitely a cool idea. Definitely a little weird seeing Mario take over a T-Rex. Yeah. Next thing I want to talk about is the mobility in the game. Now, the mobility is absolutely fantastic. It feels great like any Mario game does, but specifically being able to throw your hat and then dive and jump off it again, it really helps you to keep moving through places, get across gaps that you wouldn't normally be able to, or even just correct yourself if you mess up a little bit. I've been using it a ton for that. So I think that simple addition of being able to throw your hat and get kind of an extra jump about that, or be able to change your direction with that, is really cool, and I think that's a great addition to a Mario game. Next up is the worlds. I really liked the variety in the worlds. I've heard some people have said that they think they're too different, but I personally think that's a really good thing. I like that you feel like you're in a kind of a totally new place for each one. I like that they are not all like the same size. They're kind of different sizes. Some of them are more vertical than others. There's one specifically that does kind of have these big, wide open spaces, which is a little weird for a Mario game where you're just kind of running across it, not doing any platforming, not seeing any enemies. That's kind of odd. But overall, I really liked all the different worlds. I liked the variety in them. I liked the variety in the art style in each of them, personally. And lastly, I guess I could have kind of touched on this in Capture, but the enemies never really feel particularly threatening. You can always just kind of throw your hat at them. It actually kind of gets annoying when you're trying to... You don't want to capture a Goomba, you just want to get rid of it, and the only way to do that is to jump on it. You can't punch it like you could in some past Mario games. So that actually got a little bit annoying, but really just the enemies, none of them felt particularly threatening. You saw it, you're like, oh, I can throw my hat at it and take it over and then hop out and it's not a threat anymore. Or it's like, I can't throw my hat on it, I avoid it, or I ground pound it. But yeah, none of the enemies felt particularly difficult or threatening, and that's something that I'm definitely kind of used to in Mario games, is having certain enemies that I'm like, oh, now I gotta deal with this, but in a good way. So that was something that I missed, was, and I guess that kind of goes into how challenging it was too. I never felt threatened or like I was in danger from any of the enemies or the situations. So I guess it kind of sounded like I had a lot of negative things to say, but overall, I actually think it's a really great game. I do think it's probably getting a little bit overhyped right now. I've heard some people refer to it as the best Mario game. I definitely don't think it's the best one. Like I said, I think the mobility is the best. Well, I didn't say it was the best, but I do think the mobility is the best in any Mario game, for sure. But because of how many moons there are, how it's not really satisfying to get them, how easy the core game was, and how the enemies didn't feel really threatening at all. In those respects, it was kind of missing some things that I'm used to in a Mario game and that I like in a Mario game. So I don't think it's quite as good as some people are hyping it up to be, but overall, I think it is a really great Mario game. If you like Mario games, it's definitely worth checking out. Just don't expect the same level-based design. It's definitely basically just a big sandbox for you to run around in and find all sorts of different things. Like I said, there are some challenging parts, but overall it is pretty easy, especially the core game. But in summary, really good game if you like Mario games. If not, it might be worth checking out if you like sandbox type games. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Snake Pass, where it's basically just a collect-a-thon. You're just going around collecting all the things, which is fun, don't get me wrong. I've spent probably about 25 hours on the game now. I have about 400 moons. I'm probably going to play it a little bit more. And yeah, overall, pretty good game. Not quite as good as it's getting hyped up to be, though. All right. Thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.